Again, we have a terrific show for you today. We have in studio my favorite legislator, LINDSAY LORIGO. We also have Russ Gugino, and we're going to have on the phone for this hour Chris Jacobs. So Chris Jacobs is an extremely interesting individual. So, Chris, let me give a little bit of background. So, Chris earned his degree from Boston College, a degree in history. Then he earned a master's in business administration, so he has an MBA, and he has a law degree. So, after graduating from college, he went to work for Jack Kemp at HUD. He's done a tremendous amount of benefit to the county of Erie. At the age of 28, he co-founded the Bison Scholarship Fund, which raises money to underwrite the tuition of low and moderate income students to attend private or parochial schools. He later was a co-founder of South Buffalo Charter Schools. In terms of government and community service, there again, he exemplifies what community service is all about. He was the Deputy Commissioner of Environmental Planning under Joel Giambra. Again, he worked at HUD with Jack Kemp. Buffalo School Board, he was elected in 2004, reelected in 2009. In 2006, Governor Pataki appointed Chris to the Secretary of State. In 2011, he became our county clerk. In 2016, he was elected to the New York Senate, reelected in 2018, and in 2020 was elected to Congress. But he also is certainly a private sector guy, having Avalon Development, and which takes properties in the city of Buffalo and reuses and improves those properties. Married to a wonderful girl, Martina. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me, Chairman.
Well, Chris, you've had a very interesting background, and I want to go through kind of some of it a little bit slower. So you have all these degrees, and then after you got your law degree, what did you do after that? Is that when you went to HUD?
No, I went to HUD right after college, and really the interest on that was my summers in college. I interned for a local developer, and who did a lot of stuff back in the day. Alan Dewart, who you know, I think.
Yep.
And Alan at that time was really a pioneer trying to revitalize the theater district, and he did the theater. The Tralfamador, the Theater Place building, and the movie theater across the street at the AMC. And but one time one summer I was working with him, we looked at converting an old school on the east side of Buffalo into apartments, and we went to look at a project that had been done in Rochester, and it was renovated. It was a renovated old school. They did a beautiful job renovating it, and it became a low-income cooperative. It was a cooperative, as you know, is a form of ownership.
Right.
And it was what was stark to me in that experience was this building was in immaculate condition. It had been around for a couple of years now. I looked across the street from this building, and there was public housing. It was dilapidated, graffiti, broken windows. And it just clicked with me. What's the difference here? Because income-wise, these people are generally the same. It struck me that the difference was the people in the low-income cooperative had ownership. And that was the defining difference. And when I was graduating from college, Jack Kemp had just become appointed HUD secretary. And that's what he talked about, an ownership society, giving low-income homeownership opportunities for low-income people, entrepreneurship. So I was really energized by what he wanted to do, and fortunate enough to go down to Washington and work with him in an administration in the policy development department, where we actually were involved with passing a piece of legislation called the HOPE, Home Ownership and Opportunity for People Everywhere, which actually did these very things. So it was a great experience, but I ended up staying down there working with another associate of Mr. Kemp's who created his own organization. so I was down there about 5 years, but I came back home after that, and then a year later went to law school.
So tell me about the Bison Fund. How did this come about? This is a great thing for the community. How did you get into this?
Yes, and thank you for asking about that. I'm back now since I'm out of public office. I went back on as president of the board there, and we have a really exciting opportunity, which I did want to mention regarding Bison and expanding choice. But when I was down in Washington, I just happened to read an article about a private, essentially voucher program that had been started, private scholarship program in Indianapolis. And I just was intrigued by it. It was a simple concept that raised private dollars, give tuition assistance to local families who want to get out of failing schools and have an opportunity to put their kids in private schools of their choice. And it was started by the head of a big insurance company in Indianapolis. I picked up the phone and called the insurance company and said, this is really a great idea. How did you do it? And they said, well, actually, we've had so many calls from people who are interested in this. We're going to have a kind of a weekend seminar on how we did it. So I flew down to Indianapolis and learned what they did. And about a year later, we launched the program with a couple other great people up here in Buffalo. We raised enough money the first year to help 200 kids, and this year is our 31st year, and we're about 1,800 children.
Wow.
But one quick thing on that, in the reconciliation bill that was passed last year, Trump's great, big, beautiful bill, he put in there a powerful provision for school choice, a federal scholarship tax credit. And basically, what this does now, starting in 2027, if somebody donates up to $1,700 to a scholarship fund like ours, they can get a dollar-for-dollar credit off their federal taxes. This is a really powerful tool we're going to have to dramatically increase school choice in this state and every state across the land. But there's one caveat. The 11th hour of negotiations in the Senate, there was a provision put in that the governor of the respective state has to opt into this program. So to your listeners, to pick up the phone if you're so inclined and call Governor Hochul's office to say opt into this program. This is an opportunity to help thousands more children in New York State. It will cost nothing to the taxpayers, and it has the opportunity of actually pouring more money from outside, because anybody could give a donation from around the country to us to enable us to help many, many more children.
So you're saying that New York has not opted into this program?
It is not opted in yet. The program starts in 2027.
Okay.
But, the governor could opt in today or any time. She's saying that she's waiting till the regulations are out, which should be early summer. But the sooner that she can opt in, the better, because we can get the word out and start raising money so we can help kids next school year.
So you could get a deduction of up to $1,700 for the donation to the Bison Fund.
To the Bison Fund, actually, and it also avails itself of, let's say if the Boys and Girls Clubs had an after-school tutoring program, they could raise the money for it.
Okay.
So it is a wide berth of who could benefit, but certainly Bison is poised to do that. We have, with the situation in the diocese, we have become more and more important in helping stabilize and keep open, frankly, a lot of these schools. And we've always had more demand. We always have a bigger waiting list than we can pull off of. So this is a great opportunity. And again, you have $1,700 in tax liability in the federal government. You can choose, okay, I wanted to send it to Uncle Sam, or I can give it to something like a Bison Fund. And I believe a lot of people will opt to think their money is much better spent with something like what we do.
Chris, it's my understanding, too, as somebody that's paying a Catholic school tuition bill on a regular basis, because I believe in, a faith-based education and making sure that, political ideologies don't come into play when it comes to, my son's education. I think there's also a House bill that would allow if you do choose to send your child to a private school, that would allow you to write that off of your taxes. I get the emails from the diocese, and I get the emails asking to sign things in support. Do you think that that's actually something, if we can't even opt in at the state level, having been on the state Senate, having been in Congress, do you think that that's something that would actually get passed, and, what the impact that would have on Western New York?
Yeah, I'd have to take a look at it. It's an interesting description of what you're saying, but certainly anything that will enable more resources to go to our families, I think, is great. Bison has you can families. The way Bison works is we do a lottery every year. If a family's awarded, they can choose any private non-public school they want to go to, and then we pay up to 75% of their tuition costs. And I'll just mention this too. A lot lately, there's been a discussion of the increased taxes in the city of Buffalo, and that Buffalo doesn't pay that much taxes right now. People don't really notice that a lot of people in Buffalo, I mean, you're certainly doing it where you and Joe live, Lindsay, but a lot of people in Buffalo have an additional tax because they don't view the Buffalo's public schools as an option. So they, out of their own pocket, pay to send their kids to a private school. So essentially they're paying twice for education. They're paying their taxes that they're not benefiting from for education, and to send their kids to private school. And I think people don't really appreciate that is a significant sacrifice. I know you do doing it, Lindsay, but I just think that needs to be put in the discourse as we're talking about this, at least from my perspective in the city. But I'm actually hopeful that the governor will opt in. I think that she has stated that she's cautiously inclined to do it, but it hasn't happened yet. I know many people are reaching out to her, but we'll see.
Chris, this is Russ Gugino. Great to hear your voice.
Hi, Russ.
If I hear you correctly, it's not a tax deduction; it's a tax credit. So that means that if
Correct.
you gave $1,000, you wouldn't just deduct it. You would deduct the actual $1,000 from what the taxes that you owe. It's a big difference between a tax deduction and a tax credit. So this could be a very, very great incentive for the private sector to invest in education and be rewarded in terms of their tax consequence, correct?
That's exactly. You're absolutely. It's a big difference. That just your charitable deduction, which is which helps for sure if you itemize, but it's not a dollar for dollar. This is a powerful thing, and we really view this as an opportunity to take this to another level of raising money and really satisfying demand, and hopefully also we have some schools now. In the city of Buffalo, a couple other locales, where 90% of the children in that school are receiving Bison scholarships. So, but for the partnership with us, some of these schools might not be around. And with the situation of the diocese, their inability at this point in time to provide subsidies, we really take our role as critical, and we take our obligation to try to do more seriously. And I think this is a unique opportunity. I commend the Congress. This is something that's been talked about for a long time, but it's this president that was the one that talked about it on the campaign trail, school choice, and again, fulfilled that promise with action.
We have in studio Lindsay LORIGO and Russ Gugino, and on the phone we have Chris Jacobs. So, Chris, you spent 7.5 years on the Buffalo Board of Education. So this is a topic you know a great deal about. What do you think, in terms of what we just talked about, in terms of the tax credit, what do you think of the city of Buffalo, of Sean Ryan looking for a 25% tax increase in the city of Buffalo?
Well, I know to give him his due. I think he walked into a difficult situation. Clearly, there is a budget crisis in the city. There obviously had been a long time where the leadership of the city kicked the can, did a one-time gap filling instead of really addressing the obvious structural deficit that had been ongoing in the city of Buffalo. So clearly there's an issue there. And, as you know, the difference, as Lindsay would know, the difference between a city and a county is the county has a much more robust and diverse base of revenue in that they have property tax, but they also have sales tax and other fees. The city of Buffalo is much more limited on where it gets those from, and property tax is the core base. Seems to me like the previous administration did not only didn't raise taxes, but left the levy flat for a long time, and now we're in a real situation. But I think that saying there's nowhere that can be cut in City Hall, that we are as thin can be, and we have to go to this enormous one-time 25% increase. I think it's not ringing true with the electorate, which is largely a Democratic electorate. So I think that there needs to be a more, before the decision is made where we need to be in terms of tax increases, that needs to be a more honest, transparent discussion about city government. And I think I've talked to people who were in city government and said, Chris, you could cut 100 jobs out of City Hall, and you wouldn't notice. So I maybe that person is a little more, but is there something there? So I think that just to say that it's only one side, property taxes, and nothing else, I think that's why this is having. He seems to be having problems getting broad-based support on this.
Chris,
I'm concerned what it's going to do. I'm a property owner. I live here, but also I'm a real estate owner. And just one other thing people don't know, most people don't know, in Buffalo and Tonawanda are the only two municipalities in this county, I believe, that have a two-tiered tax structure. Buffalo has a homestead rate and a non-homestead rate. Non-homestead are commercial properties, and they're double what the non-homestead rate is. So an increase on top of that is really a hit on business. And one other thing, some of these homes, like on the west side of Buffalo, that people bought 10 years ago were at $50,000 and then got reassessed a couple years ago, they got a huge whack. Now they're going to get another whack if they go up. This is really big. This is an affordability issue. So I'm concerned. I'm concerned in that because of the fragile condition our city is in right now and our populace, that we are. I understand the mayor's plight, but I think we need to be measured as we go forward here.
Chris, I think you bring up, a really good point when it comes to looking at the city and looking at what happens, when leadership changes. I think, when we have a mayor that was there for a very long time, then it's very easy to leave a mess behind. We're seeing that at the county right now. You have a county executive who is saying that he is not going to run again, but he's sitting there in the seat right now as a lame duck county executive that's more interested in traveling down to Iowa than he is to doing the job of being county executive. And I think it really speaks to the issues that we have when we have leadership changes and people that can leave a mess behind them. Mark Polenkars and Kevin Hardwick said in the years to come, the county budget is going to be looking, I believe Kevin Hardwick said, doomier and gloomier, and Mark Polenkars said, we're looking at, dead flowers and arsenic in the future. So I think, whether it's the city or the county talking about a change in leadership and what that could mean, it really comes down to a question of priorities. So having sat in in the county clerk seat for a long time, and with your experience then going to the Senate and then Congress, I'm curious, what your assessment is looking at the county and maybe seeing, what you think priorities should be for the next county executive, or what the priorities should be for the next person that is coming to fill that seat.
I think on a broad discussion here, this would be the city, the county, is growth. With growth, a lot of problems are far more manageable. Without growth, they just multiply. And we are not growing. In 1970, our population in Erie County was 1.1 million. Now we're at 950,000. That's 150,000 people less. In addition, we're older. We have less working age population here. We have more people that are dependent. So it's just, and the county in particular feels that, because they're the lead social service entity of the county. So as welfare rolls go up or needs go up. So I think that we need to continue to focus on how can we grow our population and grow it the right way that it sets up that we can be a vibrant, growing area for, Lindsay, your children, my children, and that is that's a New York State issue. But when we're talking here in the county, and I will say we're better than a lot of other places. I've certainly traveled this state when I was in Congress and represented 6 counties, but also when I was going to run again, I was traveling a lot of other counties that I thought I might be representing, and we certainly are doing better than a lot. Also, on another issue, is I was so concerned when I was in New York State politics. Every year the Democrat leadership would push for more spending, and the rote answer of where we would get this. Where's the money tree, guys? That you keep saying we'll just go to the rich. We'll go to rich down in New York City. I think over 50% of our budget in New York State comes from the top 1% of the income earners.
That's exactly right.
And what are we doing now? Doubling down more on that. They are the most mobile population, and they're finally sick and tired of this. And with Mandami, what he's doing, I am so concerned that there is going to be. Kathy mentioned it. Maybe she didn't mean to do it. Kathy Hochul in that interview where she talked about, going to Florida and getting the millionaires back. This is a real issue because when New York gets a cold, the rest of the state gets the flu because we're so dependent on this revenue. So this is a broader issue, and I know our Republican governor candidate is talking about this. I hope at some point in time people realize this is serious. This is not just talking points. This is really serious. This financial structure that we've created over 30 years is a structure that is getting more and more fragile, and the future of the state is really something that people really need to be concerned about.
I couldn't agree more. And I think, looking at talking about affordability and keeping families here and growing the populace, as long as we keep pricing people out of Erie County and New York State and this entire area, it continues to be a problem. And I think you brought up a really good point, Kathy Hochul, whether it's Kathy Hochul or anyone else, when they're on the campaign trail, all anybody wants to talk about is affordability. But really, when we have leaders in government, I'm at the county, so I'm always focused on county government. When we look at Mark Poloncarz on his podcast saying, government is the answer to every problem, and sending out, a survey saying, what do you think the government should do about small business? Should we be paying for marketing services for small business? I think the answer really comes down to, we need leaders in office who are willing to make the difficult choices and the difficult decisions to lower and reduce the size of government and get government out of the way. So I think it's an interesting topic as we continue to discuss, what affordability actually looks like.
Lindsay, I think Exactly. And I think, I consider myself a conservative. I think conservatives we want individuals, communities, nonprofit organizations, civic organizations to play the core roles in the needs of our community, and government to be there for the things that those entities, individuals, community organizations, civic organizations, cannot do.
Exactly.
And what the difference is, I see that the city's one of the city's problems, and the county, I think, has a little bit of this, is this darn COVID money that came down. This Inflation Adjustment Act that I voted against in Congress because we were coming out of COVID. Everyone knew it, but it was the opportunity, and they had all houses, to have the boondoggle of boondoggles and get all this money out the door to these ridiculous needs. And what did the city did with it? The city plugged holes, avoided the structural deficit. The school board negotiated a new contract with the unions. I could not believe. And I do believe that the county did a few goofy things with that money too, and creating new divisions, new entities, which once the COVID money was gone, those obligations were still there. And were they going to cut it back? I don't think so.
Exactly. And I think if you're talking about...
I know that...
whether it's the county or the city, I think the priorities to make these, one-time projects and use funding for growing the size of government, it makes for really good press releases and it makes for really great TV, but it doesn't make for good government. And that's how you get into these situations where the city has grown out of proportion. You don't get into a fiscal crisis without spending your way there. Same thing with the county. You can't continue to grow the size of government and grow these things for the headlines and then not, face them in the future. I actually think it's an interesting thing. You're in development and you have been for a long time. The county and the city have both taken it upon themselves to get into affordable housing. So I'm curious what your take is, because as a taxpayer, I'm sitting here wondering, why is the county, subsidizing single unit family homes for $500,000 when the private sector should be stepping in? The private sector is stepping in and taking care of federal dollars and using federal dollars to do this. But it is a difference of priorities with the city and county. So I'm curious from your perspective, what role you think, government should actually at the local level be playing in these types of affordable conversations that are happening.
Well, I think that if you want something done the most expensive way, have government do it.
Yeah, exactly right.
That seems to be, an eternal kind of truism. I think as opposed to trying to have government fill a breach of lack of product, we really need to go through and identify, and it's not going to be too hard to talk to home builders, and what is causing prices to go up so much. And certainly there's some things we can't address here on a local level, the costs that are outside our realm, but there are likely regulatory issues, fees that don't need to be there, that are hindering, land use issues, planning issues, approval issues. All those things are either, if it's not a straight up expenditure, the time is an expenditure. The time it takes to get into the ground. The time. So I will say the other thing that people really has been very, I think, harmful is the climate agenda of the state. The CPA, which was passed when I was up in Albany, the radical climate bill. That's foreseeing electrification of homes, where we are not ready for electrification of homes in terms of costs, and that is, even if there's a gray area when it's going to be implemented or not, that's causing doubt in home builders' minds. It was just, if any elected Democrat in our area talks about affordability, the first thing you should ask them if they voted for the CLCPA, because that bill is what is now causing our electric rates to go through the roof, and our gas rates
a substantial increase that everybody.
So bad that
a substantial increase that everybody is suffering when they get their bill.
Right. And even Kathy Hochul now is trying to do something.
She's trying to walk it back.
On the left.
she's trying to walk it back,
Right.
but I don't.
Right.
It's not realistic given everything that they've got. Look, we're going to come back. We're going to take a short break here. I do want to talk about, I'm a very big proponent of increasing tax base, and that means reducing regulations and allowing businesses to do what they need to do. So, Chris, the big buzzwords today are affordability and safety. We've had 30 years of Democrat control in this state, and now we have a governor who's talking about affordability, realizing that New York State is not affordable, but they're the ones for 30 years who've been in control. So she's just trying to convince people that she can make things affordable when for 30 years they certainly haven't. What do you think is necessary, to make things affordable and to have more public safety in this community?
First, when I was county clerk and the opportunity came up to run for state senate, I was very much enjoying my job as clerk, but the reason I decided to run for the state senate was at that point in time, the state senate was still in Republican hands.
Right.
By one, it was holding out basically by one member. And and that member was actually a Democrat who would caucus Sigma Felter, who was a Orthodox Jew from New York City, who caucused with the Republicans. But I felt very strongly that it was critical to keep that body in Republican hands. And I've told people it's less of a Republican Democrat issue and more upstate downstate issue, because if we lost the Senate, the Assembly, the governor's office, and the House would be all controlled by downstate Democrats. And so when I ran, I was the only seat that year to flip.
That's right. You flipped a Democratic seat,
and then
you were able to flip a Democratic seat into the Republicans' hands.
Right. So we did keep that majority for that last term, and then Cuomo sold it. That's another story what Cuomo did, but But anyway, the next election we got creamed and fully lost control of the Senate, and now all Albany, all branches are controlled by downstate interests. Well, let me say now. Then fast forward, we have Kathy Hochul come in. Several years of this has happened. The power base shifted. I mean, it was already in New York largely, but now it fully shifted to New York. So New York, Kathy Hochul deals with a real problem that, she has this Democratic primary electorate, which is just a radicalized leftist base, and I mean, to think that a person from Buffalo who represented Buffalo would endorse a communist. And that's what happens. That's how extreme that party has gotten, that people like Schumer and that they would do this. So this party it's not, it's just not the Democratic Party of old. It's not a center-left party. It's a left party, and with a lot of people who really despise the American tale, our country. So, and so I think it's a very interesting time here, and I think it's a scary time, but also I think maybe for the Republicans and Mr. Blakeman that it presents an opportunity, that there's a large swath of the middle of New York State, the majority of people who are just common sense people who want to go and live their lives, who maybe at this point in time will reconsider that this party that they have been members of because they always have or their families have or whatever, it's not the party that it used to be. Ralph, when back in the day when the conservative line went to Dems and Republicans, right?
Yes.
There was a lot of moderate conservative Democrats.
Yes.
That's not. I mean, we have a few of them who are of conservative, moderate Democrats who are on islands. They are the loneliest people on earth right now because of where their party has gone.
And I think it's as we look at New York State, we look at Erie County in the future. I think it's interesting, that we have a governor that was once the Erie County clerk, and we have a former Erie County clerk that filled her seat afterwards. And I think it's interesting to look at, looking at the county and looking at the state. What do you think would right the ship? Are there any, issues that you think need to be addressed, or are there any directions that you think we could go in to make, as we talk about growing the population and keeping people in the city and keeping people in the county, what are the main issues that you think people are worried about?
Well, I would say this, that one of the things that was a great opportunity for me as Secretary of State for the time I was Secretary of State, and also my time in Congress, where I represented a lot more than just the few counties around Western New York, is real quick. When the new lines came out when redistricting in Congress, there was about a 2 or 3 week period that this wild district was created in the Democratic effort to gerrymander, and my seat was going to go from Erie, Niagara all the way to Fort Drum. All those counties along Lake Ontario, all the way Fort Drum, and I spent time going to these counties and meeting with constituents and seeing the challenges they had and the wonderful people who were fighting for their communities, but they were in a rough shape, and compared to us, our problems are nothing to what they have as far as depopulation, industry gone, so forth. So we are in a much better position. And I think, we haven't grown, but we've stabilized a little, up and down, we've stabilized. So we're better than we were maybe a few years ago, but not where we should be. We have not met the great potential that we have, the greatness that we used to have, that there's no reason we can't. So first, it would be great to get leadership in the state, which would start to undo some of the terrible policies that have made us number one in the worst things. Number one number 1 or 2 in highest taxes, 3 times more regulations than the average in the country. The highest energy rates when we have such abundant resources of hydro and fracking and so forth. That if we could get that back down. But absent that right now, we still have opportunities because we're right on the doorstep of Canada, and Southern Ontario, which is growing at a clip faster than almost any other region in the world. So I think we need to continue to be aware of that and continue to develop business relationships with that growing behemoth of Southern Ontario that presents us a really great opportunity.
But to me, this is going to be about putting the right people in office. We've had 30 years of Democratic rule. We need a balance. We need a change. We need to get people to vote. Democrats as well as Republicans and independents need to go to the polls. They need to realize how bad off we really are. You can't just talk about affordability and safety when you're the ones who created the unaffordability and, the fact that we're not as safe as we should be. So people need to go to the polls. People like you, Chris, who have done a good job in government, who have run for political office because of your passion, because of your public service. We need people like you. We need people like Blakeman. We need people to change the course of New York. And that's what we need our electorate to understand and go to the polls. They have an opportunity this year to make a substantial change. That substantial change is in our state government. So this year, that needs to happen. We also this year need to make sure that we keep a Republican Congress and the Republican Senate. That's going to be extremely important to keep us on the right path. And then next year, we have an opportunity here in Erie County next year to change the course of the county executive and to bring Erie County back to a more stabilized environment where business growth and population growth are the prime considerations, as opposed to, for example, in the city of Buffalo, 4 deputy mayors at hundreds of thousands of dollars apiece, and just constantly growing government, which is what the Democrats have continuously done, citywide, countywide, and statewide.
I think, as somebody that's on the ground floor in Erie County, at the county government level, when we have a budget that's doubled in 12 years under Mark Poloncarz' administration, I have to say the one thing I would disagree with is saying that, Western New York is not that bad. I think it is that bad. I think our standards have just gotten that low that we don't think it's that bad here in Erie County. And I think, on conservative chairman Ralph LORIGO's radio show, I have to say, I think the answer is simple. I think it's conservative values. I think it's reducing the size of government. I think we need to cut spending. I think we need to, in Erie County at least, take the position that county government is not the answer for everything. We can agree that I think we do need to grow the population. I think we do need to encourage businesses to come back to Buffalo, to stay in Buffalo. We know that so many have left the area, so many have gone to work from home. But I think the biggest thing that we can do to help with that is get government out of the way. We know it's one of the biggest problems. We know that businesses, not just people that, Kathy Hochul wants to tax more because they're going down to Florida or to bring them back. She's the one pushing them away. It's Erie County Executive Mark Poloncarz taxing and growing the, spending in government by twice the amount. The answer is simple. We need to cut the size of government. We need somebody to come in and make the hard decisions. And we can still provide services and keep county government doing the job it needs to do without, wasting millions of dollars on, let's say, art projects and this is something that actually happened at the county legislature a couple weeks ago, a $10,000 art project to talk about and raise awareness about environmental issues. I think it's that kind of priority that is pushing people out of New York State. That we need to address. And I think, the answers are simple, conservative values of reducing the size of government. We need leaders that will make those hard decisions.
So that's what the solution seems to be.
Statistic, Lindsay, that you're Lindsay, just an important thing that people should know what you just said about the size of our county government in the last 12 years is doubled. That's $1 billion more.
When Mark Poloncarz took office, the budget was under $1 billion. Today is over $2 billion. And 90% of that is mandated from the state. It's a lot of money. A lot of it is mandated from state-required services, but a lot of it's also discretionary. We need to make those hard decisions. I have my colleagues across the aisle that will frequently roll their eyes at me when I vote against something that's accepting a state grant. I don't want to, because it's still my taxpayer dollars, right? If I'm accepting a state grant that's, it's state money that we're accepting, and we're going to take on $10,000 for an art project to raise, awareness about the environment. But I think you need people at the local level to start saying, no, I don't want that. You know what I want that money to do? I want that to go back to New York State taxpayers to keep them here in New York State instead of just wasting money like it's, our own, leftover lunch money. It's not. It's ridiculous, and we need leaders that are going to respect the taxpayers, and right now we don't have them enough of them in office.
Is there a place for Chris Jacobs to re-enter the political field and add his expertise, knowledge, and ingenuity to some of these problems?
So, look, we're coming up against a hard break.
I don't know.
So
I might get behind running.
Go ahead, Chris.
Okay, go ahead.
No, you might get behind.
I thought I might get in and run Lindsay's campaign.
Well, Lindsay is a star. There's no question about it.
You got to get in line for that.
But, Chris, you've done a lot of good for us. So I appreciate you being on the show today. Everybody, hopefully you're listening to what needs to be done. You've heard what Chris has said and Lindsay's take on what county government is. We need this year to make a change. So I appreciate everyone being on the show. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you, Russ. Take care, everyone.